Chapter 804. Blaze. Darklight King's left hand tightly clenched into a fist, emitting a frightening heat wave. He rigidly stared at Yi Chun and Morong Qingqing's backs and inwardly said, "Gemstone Islands is not suitable for fighting. Once we're outside, I'll make you beg for death." Strongest half-step kings were revered existences wherever they went. They were even fewer in number than life and death kings. As a veteran strongest half-step king, even experts of the same level were apprehensive of him. After all, the longer one lived, the more ruthless one would become. This was something that newcomers lacked. Yi Chun and Morong Qingqing taking away the shadow armor in front of Darklight King was undoubtedly challenging his bottom line. Only heaven knew how important the armor was to him. A strongest half-step king paired with a pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifact was practically invincible under life and death realm. After Darklight King left, the crowd began to discuss in low voices. Thoroughly offending a strongest half-step king is too unwise. I'm afraid that not only will they not be able to keep the shadow armor, they will also suffer a calamity. The shadow armor is no small matter. Perhaps after equipping it, they can escape from Darklight King's hands. The speaker was a young man. He felt that it would be too much of a pity for a stunning woman like Morong Qingqing to die at Darklight King's hands. A robust man beside him turned his head and said, "You've just arrived at Gemstone Islands, haven't you? If you've been here for a long time, you'll know that this is impossible. As a veteran strongest half-step king, Darklight King's strength is unfathomable. His Darklight palm arts contain fire and earth profounds, and moreover, they have been fused to a high degree. In terms of breaking through defenses, it's extremely frightening. Although one or two palms can't kill them, a few more palms can jolt them to death, even with the shadow armor's protection, unless their Zhen Yuan can operate the armor for a long time. Using a pseudo-supreme grade artifact required a large amount of Zhen Yuan. Ordinary half-step kings simply couldn't use it more than a few times. Although pseudo-supreme grade defensive artifacts didn't have the same effect as offensive artifacts and could last longer, it could only delay death. After all, the offensive power of a strongest half-step king was incomparably powerful, and Darklight King's Darklight palm arts excelled at breaking through defenses. There will always be accidents. How could there be so many accidents? After leaving the glorious exchange, the two of them saw Wang Lan in a corner. Wang Lan came up to them and said, "Do you have any other orders?" After buying the shadow armor, Morong Qingqing was in a good mood. She tossed 100 upper-grade spirit stones to the other party and said, "You should know which island is quieter and more suitable for living. Bring us there. Blue islands are usually quieter, and the deep blue island is the best. There are all kinds of architectural styles there, including luxurious courtyards, gardens, ancient castles, and even underground buildings. But only half-step kings have the right to enter the island." Wang Lan was very familiar with the affairs of the Gemstone Islands. "All right, bring us there." Yi Chun nodded. Wang Lan froze for a second, then said hurriedly, "Oh, over here." Yi Chun's words told her without a doubt that they were indeed half-step king warriors. Orchid Island did not allow people below half-step king realm to enter, but it would not be a problem if they brought someone in. After all, some half-step kings like to be served, so they could not forbid their servants from entering, right? Therefore, Wang Lan acted as a guide and followed the two to Orchid Island. There were almost no commercial buildings on Orchid Island, only residential areas. Yi Chun and Morong Qingqing chose a huge garden and settled in. The garden's fee was not high, only 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones per month. It seemed that they did not want to earn spirit stones from half-step kings, and only wanted them to stay in the Gemstone Islands and enjoy honorable treatment. With the shadow armor in hand, Morong Qingqing returned to her room and prepared to erase the soul imprint on it. Yi Chun, on the other hand, enjoyed the scenery in the pavilion above the lake. As for Wang Lan, Yi Chun gave her an independent small courtyard, which was next door. Faintly, one could hear the sound of qi tearing through the air. She should be cultivating a martial art. The green lake was covered with water lilies, each of them with different colors swaying in the wind, looking elegant and beautiful. Besides a couple of pavilions connected to each other, there was also a stone bridge made of gray rocks. From Yi Chen's perspective, the afternoon sun and the stone bridge seemed to be on top of each other, looking very picturesque. Yi Chen was a person who did as he pleased, so he laid down in the pavilion and took a nap. After sleeping for an unknown amount of time, a yellow light streaked across the sky, as if a faintly discernible meteor was streaking across the sky. A soft exclamation sounded out as the yellow light curved in the direction of Yi Chen's garden, ultimately landing in the pavilion. Yi Chen opened his eyes and said with a smile, "You also live in the Gemstone Islands." It was none other than the yellow-robed woman, who had parted ways in the mysterious Yin King's ruins. "Huang Mei, I still don't know your name." The yellow-robed woman sat on a stone chair with a smile and poured herself a cup of tea. Yi Chen sat in front of her and said, "Yi Chen. Good name. I heard that a man and a woman offended the Darklight King in Scarlet Island's glorious exchanges. Don't tell me it's the two of you?" Huang Mei looked pensive. Yi Chen smiled, tacitly agreeing. "The Darklight King is very powerful. You'd better not be careless. If possible, it's best not to clash head-on. His Darklight palm arts are extremely powerful, and even my innate ability is somewhat unable to bear it. After so many years, his Darklight palm arts should have improved by another level." Yi Chen said, "So you've exchanged blows with him?" Yi Chen wasn't too clear on how powerful a strongest half-step king was, but he was certain that they couldn't do anything to him. You've entered half-step king realm?" Huang Mei faintly nodded and suddenly exclaimed. She hadn't paid much attention to Yi Chen's cultivation base. Just a moment ago, she unintentionally sized him up and discovered that Yi Chen was already a half-step king. Yi Chen was already unfathomable when he was at the peak of Late Sea of Soul Realm. How strong would he be after entering half-step king realm? Hee. Chuckling, Huang Mei said, "Seems like I was worrying for nothing." In truth, although Huang Mei felt that Yi Chen wasn't someone to be trifled with, if she went all out, she still had the confidence to defeat Yi Chen. After all, strongest half-step kings were not just for show. Moreover, she also had a pseudo-supreme grade artifact. A strongest half-step king, combined with a pseudo-supreme grade artifact, could erupt with an unimaginable battle strength. It should be known that pseudo-supreme grade artifacts were too high-end for half-step kings. Ordinary half-step kings couldn't use them more than a few times. On the other hand, the Zhen Yuan of strongest half-step kings was incomparably deep, allowing them to bring out the might of pseudo-supreme grade artifacts to a whole new level. However, now that Yi Chen was a half-step king, his strength was bound to increase by several folds. Darklight King would most likely be at a disadvantage. Of course, she didn't know that Yi Chen was different from others. Others only had more Zhen Yuan and purer Zhen Yuan. But Yi Chen had upgraded his Green Lotus sword arts to heaven grade. Moreover, he had unearthed a half-baked sword domain. Be it in group battles or one-on-one battles, he was a frightening existence. After chatting for a cup of tea's worth of time, Huang Mei left. A few days later, not only did Murong Qingqing erase the soul imprint on the shadow armor, she also imprinted her own soul imprint on it. As a pseudo-supreme grade artifact, the shadow armor could be adjusted to a certain degree. For example, since Murong Qingqing was a female, the shadow armor had become a lot slimmer, and her chest area had 2 protrusions. Wearing it on the body wouldn't cause any discomfort. In the courtyard, Yi Chen smiled. "How about testing the Heavenly Star Force Field first?" "Alright." Murong Qingqing didn't use the Dark Force Field. Instead, she poured her demonic power into the shadow armor and activated its Heavenly Star Force Field. Pop! A transparent ripple spread out. Standing in front of Murong Qingqing, Yi Chen felt that the surreal space had become much more viscous, and any movement he made would be more strenuous. He couldn't do as he pleased. Along with Murong Qingqing's manipulation of the Heaven Star Force Field, a repulsive force acted on Yi Chen's body like the power of heaven and earth. Dang! Yi Chen retreated several steps. Not bad. Just as Yi Chen finished his words, the repulsive force suddenly turned into a gravitational force, pulling him over. Without a choice, he had to increase his Zhen Yuan circulation to counteract this gravitational force. Now, Let's try the effect of combining the Heavenly Star Force Field and the Dark Force Field. The Heavenly Star Force Field's strength was quite impressive. Yi Chen estimated that even if he circulated his Zhen Yuan with all his might, he would still be affected. The closer he was to Morong Qingcheng, the greater the effect. It was no wonder that Darklight King would pay so much attention to it. After all, in a battle between experts, even a tiny gap was a gap. The surface of Morong Qingcheng's body flickered with purple-black electric currents. With a sizzling sound, the space suddenly shook, and the whole courtyard became blurry. Shoo! Caught off guard, Yi Chen was repelled by an extremely powerful repulsive force. Even if he circulated his Zhen Yuan with all his might, it would be useless. He was too close to Morong Qingcheng, and the density of his Zhen Yuan was almost the same as Morong Qingcheng's. Moreover, the latter's demonic power was purer than his. Too powerful, Yi Chen was directly pressed against the courtyard's wall. If not for Morong Qingcheng restraining the repulsive force, he would have been repelled even further. Moreover, he would have suffered some injuries, and wouldn't have been able to get close. After restraining the repulsive force, Morong Qingcheng suddenly changed the force field into gravity. Under the amplification of the Heavenly Star Force Field, the gravity of the Dark Force Field was like a black hole. Yi Chen was directly sucked in, so fast that Yi Chen seemed to be passing through the void. Sword Domain. At the crucial moment, Yi Chen released his Sword Domain, which interweaved with Morong Qingcheng's Dark Force Field. Although the Sword Domain was not a force field, it possessed extremely powerful defensive and offensive abilities. After layers of weakening, the Dark Force Field no longer had much effect on Yi Chen. Pop! The purple-black electric currents on Morong Qingcheng's body dissipated, and the force field retracted. Retracting his Sword Domain as well, Yi Chen praised. Simply inconceivably powerful. Even a strongest half-step king can't get close to you, and can only attack from a distance. Force field had a huge effect on a whole object, but it would be much weaker against energy attacks, because the energy was only temporarily gathered together, and not a whole. Of course, it would still be somewhat weakened, and couldn't be ignored. Morong Qingcheng said, "This shadow armor has another use." "What use?" Whoosh! A dim light flickered, and Morong Qingcheng suddenly appeared in front of Yi Chen. Speed amplification. Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Morong Qingcheng's speed was already very fast, and combined with the shadow armor, her speed was probably the fastest among half-step kings. Chapter 805. With the shadow armor, Morong Qingcheng's strength had increased imperceptibly, and her survivability had also increased. With Morong Qingcheng's demonic power cultivation base, she could probably maintain the shadow armor for a quarter of an hour. During this time, even strongest half-step kings wouldn't be able to do anything to her. However, defense and survivability were only a last resort. To truly increase her strength, she still needed an extremely sharp offensive artifact. As the two's guide, Wang Lan naturally gave them advice and suggestions. Gemstone Archipelago holds a large-scale auction every year. The location is the Golden Island in the middle of Gemstone Archipelago. Everything that can be auctioned is the best of the best. Although I've never been there, I've heard that even the lowest grade items are peak upper grade, with the majority being half supreme grade items. The finale items can even make half-step kings go crazy. Sometimes, even life and death kings would come and participate in the bidding. How much time is left until the auction? Yi Chen's heart shook as he asked. Wang Lan said, "About a month and a half. During this time, you two should prepare a lot of spirit stones." A month and a half, not bad. Yi Chen faintly nodded. As for spirit stones, they didn't lack them at all. Although Morong Qingcheng had used 34 million upper-grade spirit stones, she still had 70 million left. As for Yi Chen, after obtaining Lin Yushuan's storage ring, he had 180 million upper-grade spirit stones. If not for mysterious Yin King being so powerful that he didn't have the time to obtain other people's storage rings, his spirit stones would be in the hundreds of millions. The higher the level of a martial artist, the less they would feel the flow of time. Often, a month would pass without them noticing. For ordinary people, a month was a very long time. They could do many things, become rich overnight, or go bankrupt overnight. In this month, apart from raising his cultivation base, Yichen spent the rest of his time cultivating Waning Moon and Bewitching Mirror Shattering. Of course, the foundation of Space Profound was even more important. Waning Moon was a fusion profound martial skill, containing 80% metal profound and 60% water profound. Although it had been surpassed by the Bewitching Mirror Shattering, it still had a lot of potential to be unearthed. Moreover, the Bewitching Mirror Shattering consumed a lot of Zhen Yuan, while Waning Moon consumed a lot less. If he wanted to improve the metal profound and water profound, it would naturally be extremely difficult. After all, the state of being one with the world could only be obtained when breaking through realms. Although it was said to be a realm breakthrough, it was actually just a transition period. Since he couldn't improve his profoundness in a short time, Yichen didn't want to waste his time. Instead, he focused his research on fusing the metal and water profoundness. This month's time had not been wasted. As the degree of fusion increased, Yichen felt that Waning Moon's power had increased. His execution speed had also increased. Bewitching Mirror Shattering contained the Space Profound. 40% Space Profound, in terms of pure power amplification, was already equivalent to 120% Ordinary Profound. It was 2 levels higher than Ordinary Perfection Profound. This was Yichen's ace in the hole, and also a super killing move that he wouldn't casually use. After witnessing the might of a demonic king, Yichen felt that he had to cultivate Bewitching Mirror Shattering to perfection as soon as possible. Although he would still be killed by the demonic human king after cultivating it to perfection, at least he had something to look forward to, which was better than no progress at all. Pop! With a wave of his sword, the fake mountain in the courtyard warped and folded, disappearing all of a sudden. Wang Lan, who happened to see this scene from the yard next door, was shocked. She could also destroy the fake mountain completely, and any condensing reality realm warrior could do it. It would be too easy. But Yichen, who did not release any chi power, and made the fake mountain disappear without a trace, it was something she had never seen before. Of course, the fake mountain didn't disappear, but was devoured by the space power. Such a fragile thing could be directly skipped out on the process of disappearing. Another half a month passed, and the Golden Islands auction was about to begin. On this day, under Wang Lan's guidance, the 3 flew toward the Golden Island in the center of the Gemstone Islands. The island was already filled with people. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the island was suffused with a faint golden color. The people on the island were all Sea of Soul Realm experts or half-step kings. There was not a single person below the Sea of Soul Realm. Wang Lan said, "I can't go to Golden Island, so I'll send you here. You return to the garden first. Perhaps you'll be of use later." Wang Lan was, after all, a native of the Gemstone Islands. She couldn't be more familiar with this place. Before leaving the islands, she was the best choice as a guide, saving them a lot of time. On the island, Yichen and Morong Qingqing walked toward the only huge building on the island. The Golden Island auction house was entirely made of gold. Under the illumination of the sunlight, it flickered with a dazzling golden light. It was 100 times more magnificent than any building in Yichen's world. If the whole thing was moved there, it would definitely be called a miracle. Xiao. There were already enough people on the island, but groups of people still landed on the island. Among them, there was no lack of half-step kings with astonishing auras. Let's go in. At the entrance of the auction house, Yichen and Morong Qingqing strode in. The Golden Island auction house didn't have any VIP rooms. The front row was filled with a large number of spectators, while the back row was filled with empty areas. Each area was separated by a golden fence. Inside there was a table, a few soft leather chairs, and beautiful maids standing to the side. Yichen naturally didn't want to be squeezed with others, so he and Morong Qingqing sat in the back row. In fact, the place Yichen had chosen was precisely prepared for half-step kings. Sitting on the leather chairs, beautiful maids poured tea for the two. There were also fresh fruits and pastries on the table. Quite a lot of people. Leaning against the back of the chair, Yichen took a sip of tea. Darklight King is also here. Morong Qingqing saw the Darklight King in the third area. Darklight King clearly saw the two as well. The killing intent in his eyes wasn't concealed at all, causing the surrounding people to retreat, not daring to sit too close. Yi Chen faintly smiled and didn't look at the other party. As time passed, the spectators' seats in the auction house gradually filled up, and the empty area in the back was filled with many half-step kings. Among these half-step kings, there were many worthy of attention. For example, Shi Xiaobao, who had arrived at Gemstone Islands at some unknown time, the eccentric old man in raincoat, and Huang Mei, who had already met Yi Chen. Apart from them, there were also a few people who attracted Yi Chen's attention. For example, two women in white robes. One was a bit older, in her 30s, with a dignified appearance. The other was in her 20s, with exquisite facial features. She was Yu Bingxin of the Silver Moon White Fox clan. Both had a silver crescent moon tattoo on their foreheads. Yu Bingxin sensed Yi Chen's gaze and looked over. When she saw Yi Chen and Morong Qingcheng, a pleasantly surprised smile blossomed on her face. "Young Master Yi, I didn't expect to see you here." Yu Bingxin transmitted her voice. Yi Chen said, "A coincidence indeed. Seems like the Moonlight Island of your Silvermoon White Fox clan isn't too far from Gemstone Islands." "It's not too far," Yu Bingxin said. "Bingxin, who are you talking to?" The dignified woman beside Yu Bingxin revealed a strange expression when she saw Yu Bingxin looking at Yi Chen. "Auntie, he's the young master Yi Chen I've been talking about. In chaotic demonic ocean, he killed the experts of the demonic humans and saved my life." "Oh, it's him. Then you should properly thank them." The dignified woman revealed a faint smile toward Yi Chen, her expression carrying a trace of gratitude. If not for Yi Chen, Yu Bingxin would have already been captured by the demonic humans. With the strength of the Silvermoon White Fox clan, they simply wouldn't have been able to rush over to the demonic humans and rescue her. "You too. I'm Yu Bingxin's auntie Yu Lingshuang. Many thanks for saving my life. If there's any trouble, I won't shirk my duty." Yi Chen said, "It's nothing." After chatting for a while, both sides stopped. During this time, Yu Lingshuang noticed that the Darklight King was occasionally staring at Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing with overflowing killing intent. She creased her brows and said, "Bingxin, I'm afraid your benefactor's situation isn't good. I can see that the Darklight King has a big grudge with him. What should we do?" Yu Bingxin didn't notice this and immediately became anxious. She had also heard of the Darklight King's name. Under Life and Death Realm, very few were his opponents. Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing had offended him, and their fate was grim. It would be difficult for them to leave Gemstone Islands. "Auntie, save them." Yu Bingxin pulled Yu Lingshuang's sleeve. "Even if you don't say it, I won't watch them die. It's just that, with the Darklight King's strength, I'm not sure if I can repel him. I can't protect them forever, unless he's willing to come with us to Moonlight Island as a guest. I believe he won't dare to linger around Moonlight Island for a while. Once he leaves, he can leave without a trace." Yu Lingshuang was a rare genius of Moonlight Island. Since she dared to protect Yi Chen, she was naturally a strongest half-step king. Hearing her auntie's words, Yu Bingxin heaved a sigh of relief. Once the auction was over, she would certainly persuade Yi Chen to go to Moonlight Island. After a cup of tea's worth of time, the auction house was nearly full. The auctioneer stood on the stage and said a few words. Then he waved his hand, and two beautiful maids walked up with a round plate. The auction had begun. Just as Wang Lan had said, the lowest grade items were peak upper grade treasures. The first item was a dagger radiating a cold light. Its color was bright red, as if it had been soaked in blood. The starting bid was 150,000 upper grade spirit stones. After a round of bidding, the dagger was bought by one person for 350,000 upper grade spirit stones. With dozens of items sold, the auction entered its climax. The following items were all half-step extreme grade treasures, incomparably precious spirit herbs, rare materials whose names had never been heard of, or artifacts that everyone was going crazy over. The 37th item, a heart-protecting flower. On the stage, the auctioneer's face was glowing as he called out the next item. Heart-protecting flower. Yi Chen smiled bitterly. Before breaking through to half-step king realm, he had always wanted to find a heart-protecting flower. However, his wish had never been fulfilled. Who would have thought that he would see one after breaking through to half-step king realm? It was simply a freak accident. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Of course, although the heart-protecting flower was useless to him, it was extremely useful to those who had yet to break through to half-step king realm. Therefore, Yi Chen decided to buy it and leave it for Yi family as a treasure. However, Yi Chen had clearly underestimated the crowd's desire for the heart-protecting flower. Those Sea of Soul realm experts could naturally be ignored. Some half-step kings started bidding. Many of them had sects behind them, and this was a contribution to their sections. In the future, their sects would reward them with even more wealth. Chapter 806. 700,000. 750,000. 780,000. The starting price of the heart-protecting flower was 500,000 upper-grade spirit stones. The first bidder did not even think before adding 200,000, as if he wanted to intimidate the others. Unfortunately, no one bought it. What a joke! The market price of a single heart-nourishing flower was close to 300,000 spirit stones. As an essential spirit flower for entering half-step king realm, how could anyone be intimidated by a mere 200,000 spirit stones? 1 million. Yu Bingxin's Aunt Yu Lingshuang raised her hand. 1,100,000. The next bidder was the Golden Lion clan's young lord Shi Xiaobao. 1,200,000. Huang Mei also bid. Yi Chen originally wanted to bid, but seeing Huang Mei's interest, he hesitated and put down his hand. Huang Mei had helped him once in the mysterious Yin Tower. If she was determined to get the heart-protecting flower, Yi Chen decided to give it up. Of course, if the opposite party gave up on her own initiative, he would still bid. 1,400,000. This time, the bidder was none other than the brocade-robed old man from Glorious Exchanges, manager He. 2 million. Yu Lingshuang was a millennium genius of the Silver Moon White Fox clan, so her wealth was definitely not small. 3 million. Shi Xiaobao sneered and added 1 million. Morong Qingqing didn't intend to bid and said with a smile, "It seems like this heart-protecting flower is going to reach a sky-high price. The rarer something is, the more valuable it is. Although the heart-protecting flower is only a semi-extreme grade spirit stone, its value is definitely not limited to that." Yi Chen said, 5 million. With a smile on her face, Huang Mei ruthlessly increased the bid by 2 million, shocking everyone in one fell swoop. 5 million high-grade spirit stones was already not an ordinary number. The majority of half-step kings didn't have that much wealth. Although the heart-protecting flower was very important to the sect and could increase the number of half-step kings, sometimes one couldn't be so one-sided. 5 million high-grade spirit stones might be able to create more half-step kings. After all, not everyone needed the heart-protecting flower to enter the half-step king realm. For example, if Yi Chen didn't want to enter the half-step king realm as soon as possible, he could wait for several months, or even a year and a half. A year and a half was nothing to a Sea of Soul realm expert. Therefore, even the arrogant Shi Xiaobao gave up on bidding, as it wasn't worth it. 5 million? Forget it. Yu Lingshuang also stopped bidding and looked at Huang Mei with interest. 1 million. The brocade-robed old man, Steward He, didn't want to give up yet. 5,500,000. Huang Mei's expression was calm. Humph. Exhaling, Steward He leaned back in his leather chair and stopped bidding. 5 million going once, 5 million going twice, 5 million going thrice sold. The auctioneer slammed his gavel, his face full of excitement. The heart-protecting flower was not something that could be found all the time. It was definitely out of his expectations that it could be sold for 5 million. None of the following items were sold for more than 5 million, far less than the heart-protecting flower. The atmosphere in the auction hall also dropped slightly. The 42nd auction item is a set of top-notch high-grade artifacts. It consists of armor, greaves, boots, bracers, and gloves. The starting price is 5 million high-grade spirit stones. After the heart-protecting flower, another heavyweight auction item appeared on the stage. A single top-notch high-grade artifact wasn't enough for half-step kings. However, a full set was a different story. In terms of defense, It surpassed the majority of half-step extreme-grade artifacts. Apart from that, wearing a full set of artifacts would increase one's speed, attack speed and offensive power. 3 million. Sure enough, many half-step kings were moved. They didn't have a pseudo-extreme-grade artifact, so a full set of top-notch high-grade artifacts was naturally the best choice. 5 million. 4 million. In the end, this set of artifacts was bought by a half-step king for 6 million. The 48th auction item is a pair of purple flame demonic light gloves, a half-step extreme-grade replica of the 3 most famous extreme-grade gloves of the past 100,000 years. The blazing divine light gloves contains the power of fire and darkness. Among all the half-step extreme-grade artifacts, it is definitely a top-notch artifact, not inferior to the majority of pseudo-extreme-grade artifacts. The starting price is 8 million high-grade spirit stones, and each bid must be at least 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. The bidding starts now. If a full set of top-notch high-grade artifacts was considered heavyweight, then the purple flame demonic light gloves was super heavyweight. Just the fact that it was not inferior to the majority of pseudo-extreme-grade artifacts was enough to make half-step kings go crazy. Not to mention, this pair of gloves contained the power of fire and darkness. Just as the auctioneer's voice faded, Darklight King loudly said, 10 million. What? Darklight King is also bidding? Doesn't he have a pair of pseudo-extreme-grade gloves? Everyone was shocked. You guys don't know, but Darklight King only has one glove, and it's not complete. Moreover, the purple flame demonic light gloves contains the power of fire and darkness. Darklight King's Zhen Yuan happens to be of the fire attribute, and he also comprehended fire profound. How could he not bid? So that's how it is. It seems like this pair of gloves belongs to Darklight King. More or less, be it in terms of wealth or strength, Darklight King was not someone ordinary could compare to. Even if he didn't threaten you, you wouldn't be able to compete with him. Moreover, if you provoked him, he might find an opportunity to kill you and seize your gloves. Seeing Darklight King's bid, those who originally had some thoughts turned silent. Murong, it seems like we're going to have to contend with Darklight King again. Yichen laughed. Murong Qingqing also laughed and raised her hand. 12 million. You again. Darklight King fiercely looked at Murong Qingqing, his gaze cold and emotionless. What? Can't afford to play? Yichen flicked his fingers. Humph. 15 million. Darklight King turned his head. He currently had 34 million upper-grade spirit stones, and the other party had already spent more than 30 million. He didn't believe that he couldn't compete with Murong Qingqing. 16 million. This time, the bidder was not Murong Qingqing, but a tall and sturdy square-faced man. This person had extremely long arms and thick palms. With a single glance, one could tell that his martial arts were extremely powerful. It's Crimson Fire King. This is going to be interesting. This square-faced man was extremely famous in Gemstone Islands. He was one of the few experts under strongest half-step kings. He was equivalent to Jin Wanshuang, who had teamed up with Yichen a few months ago, or perhaps even stronger. Since Crimson Fire King dared to compete with Darklight King, he had to make a great decision. After all, the gloves were something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Once he obtained them, his strength would definitely increase rapidly. 18 million. Murong Qingqing didn't raise the price to an outrageous level. She felt that 20 million was more or less the bottom line of these people. 19 million. Darklight King hesitated for a moment before adding another million. 19,500,000. Crimson Fire King only added 500,000. 20 million. Murong Qingqing made another bid. Damn it. Darklight King glanced at Murong Qingqing, and his eyes flickered. He actually stopped bidding, seemingly giving up. Yichen observed his expression, and naturally knew that Darklight King hadn't given up. Perhaps this person planned to kill both of them. That way, he wouldn't have to pay any spirit stones. 20,500,000. Red Flame King fiercely gritted his teeth. His entire fortune was only 18 million spirit stones, and some of his treasures could only be exchanged for 3 million spirit stones at most. This was already his limit. Any more, and he would have nothing left. After bidding, he stared at Murong Qingqing. 21 million. Morong Qingqing indifferently said. Huff. Heavily spitting out a mouthful of turbid qi, Crimson Fire King's face flickered with anger, but he didn't say anything else. 21 million going once, 21 million going twice, 21 million going thrice sold. Congratulations to this young lady. The auctioneer suddenly slammed his gavel. Soon, someone delivered the purple flame demonic light gloves, and Morong Qingqing also paid 21 million upper-grade spirit stones. I'll help you refine the soul imprint in these gloves. If Morong Qingqing were to refine it, it would take several days. If Yi Chen were to refine it, it would take at most a cup of tea's time. It should be known that when he was at Late Sea of Soul Realm, he could refine the soul imprint of a half-step king in a short period of time. Now that he was at half-step king realm, although his soul power hadn't made any progress, its strength had increased several times. To avoid any unexpected problems, Yi Chen decided to let Morong Qingqing equip the gloves as soon as possible. Then, he would use the remaining time to familiarize himself with them. The purple flame demonic light gloves were a pair of black gloves with purple gold veined patterns. It was soft and smooth to the touch, and didn't have much weight. On the back of the gloves was a purple flame pattern. Under the flowing luster, it seemed to be burning. Receiving the purple flame demonic light gloves, Yi Chen's soul power invaded and easily erased the soul imprint inside. In less than a cup of tea's time he succeeded. Putting on the purple flame demonic light gloves, Morong Qingqing gradually branded her own soul mark on them. Only with a soul mark could the power of this pair of gloves be maximized. While the two were busy, several items had already been auctioned off on the auction stage. The 52nd item is a sword forging art jade strip. The auctioneer paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and loudly announced, "Sword forging art." Yi Chen's eyes narrowed, flickering with a bright light. The auctioneer continued, "This sword forging art jade strip contains everything from low to semi-extreme grade sword forging knowledge. It even contains a small portion of extreme grade sword forging knowledge. If one can master it thoroughly, it is not impossible to forge an extreme grade sword." What? It even contains the knowledge of forging extreme grade sword forging? Everyone in the auction house was shocked. In the ancient era, forging artifacts was very developed. However, as time passed, a lot of knowledge was lost. In the modern era, the highest grade artifacts that could be forged were semi-extreme grade artifacts. Moreover, only some super forces had the knowledge of forging extreme grade artifacts. Although it wasn't impossible for them to have knowledge of forging extreme grade artifacts, very few people had heard of it. Of course, to prevent people from thinking that my Golden Island auction house is deceiving everyone, I will once again declare that this jade strip contains only a small portion of extreme grade sword forging knowledge. Moreover, it is very incomplete. The auctioneer didn't dare to speak too confidently. What a joke. Some of the people in the auction house had very deep backgrounds. If he spoke too confidently, the forces behind them would definitely come to the auction house. Chapter 807. Even without supreme grade sword forging knowledge, this sword forging art jade strip will be of great use to the sect. Yi Chen said solemnly. Morong Qingqing faintly nodded. Mastering the knowledge in the sword forging art jade strip will allow one to continuously forge great swords. With enough time, a sect that has mastered the sword forging art would be able to raise a large number of sword forging masters and mass-produce great swords. This is something that cannot be measured with money. Sword forging art jade strip's starting price is 15 million upper-grade spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 500,000. Let the bidding begin. After explaining the situation, the auctioneer announced loudly, 16 million. Glorious Exchange's steward was the first to bid. 17 million. Shi Xiaobao didn't decline. 18 million. Yu Lingshuang extended her right hand, her voice firm and powerful. This sword forging art jade strip needs at least 30 million before anyone will back out. Yi Chen wasn't in a hurry. He raised his teacup and took a sip. As Yi Chen had expected, the price of the sword forging art's jade strip continued to rise like a rocket. Those interested in the sword control art were not limited to the first three. Huang Mei, Scarlet Fire King, and some other half-step kings with powerful backgrounds also joined in, causing the price of the sword forging art to never stop. 35 million. The steward's voice was resounding. 38 million. Yuling Shuang seemed to have made up her mind to bring the sword forging art jade strip back to the Silvermoon White Fox clan. After all, it was too important to the clan. 40 million. Shi Xiaobao had already backed out of the bidding. His wealth was far from enough, and the auction house didn't accept credit. As a strongest half-step king, Huang Mei's wealth was unimaginable. Adding what she had obtained from mysterious Yin King's ruins, her wealth was probably nearing 100 million or even more. 40 million was like a feather to her. Yuling Shuang smiled bitterly at Yu Bingxin. If I had known earlier, I would have spent a bit more upper-grade spirit stones. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so helpless. Auntie, our Silvermoon White Fox clan doesn't have many sword users. Let's forget about it. Yu Bingxin suggested. Alright, let them compete. With her hands clasped together, Yuling Shuang leaned against the leather chair and relaxed. The bidding continued. Apart from manager He and Huang Mei, who were determined to get the sword forging art jade strip, there was another half-step king, who was not that famous. There are 3 people left. It's about time for us to participate. Yi Chen had many concerns. He was afraid that Huang Mei would be the only one left in the end. It wouldn't be good for him to bid, but it also wouldn't be good if he didn't bid. After all, although he was indebted to Huang Mei, he had to obtain the sword forging technique jade scroll. 50 million. Putting down the teacup, Yi Chen stretched out his right hand. Him again. Steward, he was furious. So young Master Yi is also interested in the sword forging art. Huang Mei looked at Yi Chen and transmitted her voice to him. Yi Chen said, I'm sorry. It's rare for me to be interested in this sword forging technique jade strip. How about this? After I win it, I'll share everything apart from supreme grade sword forging knowledge with you. I don't think you have too much hope for the supreme grade sword forging knowledge inside. Right. The knowledge of a damaged supreme grade sword forging is of little use. Since that's the case, I'll help you achieve your dream. Immediately Huang Mei gave up. 51 million. While bidding, Steward he transmitted his voice to Yi Chen. Little brother, I'm Glorious Exchange's steward he. Previously, there seemed to be some conflict between us, but as the steward of Glorious Exchanges, I have no choice in some matters. If little brother gives up, I can overstep my authority and give you a Glorious Exchanges token. In the future, as long as you set up a stall in my Glorious Exchanges, your fees will be waived. The fees charged by Glorious Exchanges were not low. The first floor was 5%, the second floor was 4%, and the third floor was 3%. In other words, selling a treasure worth 10 million could save 300,000. Once or twice didn't seem like much, but after a long time, it could save a lot of spiritual stones. Yi Chen sneered. This steward he was really insincere if he wanted to send him away with a Glorious Exchanges token. Moreover, his tone was more or less threatening, as if he was saying, don't be so shameless. Of course, if it was someone else they might agree, but Yi Chen didn't need to think about it. He wouldn't be staying in Gemstone Islands for long anyway. So the Glorious Exchanges token was useless to him. 52 million. Yi Chen continued bidding. It seems like little brother doesn't want to give face to Glorious Exchanges. Steward he's face darkened, a hint of killing intent appearing at the corner of his mouth. Of course I have to give face to Glorious Exchanges, but you don't have the qualifications to represent Glorious Exchanges. Yi Chen said sarcastically. I hope you won't regret it. Steward he gritted his teeth and said. He didn't try to persuade Yi Chen anymore. When the price rose to 56 million, Steward he gave up. He could only mobilize 50 to 60 million spiritual stones. In fact, the price he had in mind was not more than 60 million. After all, he had no idea how useful the knowledge in the swordsmithing art was. If he didn't buy it, it would be a great loss if it wasn't worth the price. 58 million. In the end, there was only one person left to compete with Yi Chen. The sword chi on this person's body was very sharp. He was a half-step sword king. The sect he belonged to was the Thousand Swords sect, which was not far from the Gemstone Islands. Basically, everyone in the sect used swords. Therefore, this jade slip of the imperial sword technique would play an important role in the Thousand Sword sect. 60 million. Yi Chen's expression turned solemn. It seemed like this person had prepared for this. The two continued bidding. Soon the price rose to 70 million. The huge number made everyone in the auction hall suck in a cold breath. 70 million upper-grade spiritual stones. They wouldn't be able to get this price even if they sold themselves. If they had so many spiritual stones, they could arm themselves to the teeth. 71 million. Yi Chen's expression was solemn, but his opponent's expression was 10 times more solemn. Gemstone Islands had a branch of the Thousand Sword sect, which was why he had so many spiritual stones. However, Yi Chen didn't seem to have a limit. No matter how much he bid, Yi Chen would increase without any hesitation. This made him lose all confidence. 75 million. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen increased the price by 4 million. He was determined to get the sword forging technique. This was not for the present, but for the future. When he became a life and death king, he would have the ability to roam the starry sky. If he could find some supreme-grade materials, he would be able to forge supreme-grade swords. How fast would that be? Although the knowledge in the sword forging technique wasn't much, it should be enough to build a foundation. The other party turned silent. 75 million, he couldn't afford it. The auctioneer waited for a while. Seeing that no one else was bidding, he knew that the price had reached 75 million. Holding the hammer in his hand, he walked to the front of the auction stage and said loudly, 75 million. Is there anyone else? If not, this sword forging technique belongs to this little brother. Nobody spoke. Alright, 75 million going once, 75 million going twice, 75 million going thrice. Sold. Congratulations to this little brother. With a clang, the auctioneer slammed the hammer. Soon, someone delivered the sword forging technique. Without any hesitation, Yi Chen handed over 75 million upper-grade spirit stones. The swordsmithing technique was the finale item of this auction. Thus the auction came to an end. Someone had calculated that the total price of this auction was 420 million. Compared to the previous auctions, it was 30 to 40% higher. This was definitely a large-scale auction that was rarely seen in 10 years. Before leaving, Darklight King and manager he coldly glanced at Yi Chen. The half-step sword king from Thousand Sword sect also stared at Yi Chen for a long time. Seems like I can't stay here for long. Yi Chen sighed inwardly. He wasn't afraid of Darklight King, but the glorious exchanges in Thousand Sword sect behind manager, he made him apprehensive. Who knew if the sword forging technique would provoke a life and death king? Let's go back to the garden. Gemstone Islands didn't have any life and death kings, so Yi Chen needed to do something useful in this short period of time. Leaving the Golden Island auction house, the two hurried back to the garden. At this moment the sky was already dark. In the bedroom, Yi Chen took out the sword forging technique and poured his soul power inside. Buzz! A cool and refreshing feeling suddenly rushed into Yi Chen's mind, turning into countless chaotic tiny symbols. The symbols then rearranged themselves, ultimately turning into a complete knowledge of sword forging technique. Low grade, mid grade, upper grade and semi-supreme grade were clearly separated. After the semi-supreme grade, there was a short and incomplete section on forging supreme grade swords. Sure enough, it's real. Yi Chen simulated it in his mind and felt that the content was real. Although he had never studied sword forging technique, as a sword artist, he always had some inexplicable intuition. However, the initial stage of forging a sword requires a large amount of materials. Even a genius in forging swords would not be able to succeed on his first try. Even if he succeeds, it does not mean anything. The art of forging swords is broad and profound, and it is not something that can be mastered in a day or two. It is also not something that can be deepened with just 1 or 2 tries. The sky turned dark, and the night passed peacefully. Early the next morning, Yi Chen had Wang Lan bring them to the Yellow Islands. Yellow Islands sold all kinds of materials, spirit grasses, precious ores, gems of various attributes, and basically anything one could wish for. According to the grade of the materials, They were divided into light yellow islands, bright yellow islands, and orange islands. Light yellow islands sold low-grade to mid-grade materials, bright yellow islands sold mid-grade to upper-grade materials, and orange islands sold upper-grade to semi-supreme grade materials. As for whether one could find a supreme grade material, it depended on luck. Instead of going straight to the orange island, Yi Chen's trio went to the light yellow island. Without a change in expression, Yi Chen bought over 10,000 sets of low-grade materials and several thousand mid-grade materials. For a moment, the light yellow island was in short supply of materials for forging artifacts. Following the same pattern, Yi Chen looted the bright yellow and orange islands, buying a total of 12,000 sets of different low-grade materials, 5,000 sets of different mid-grade materials, and 2,000 upper-grade and semi-supreme grade materials. He even got 3 sets of supreme grade materials. If not for an upper-grade storage ring and many mid-grade and low-grade storage rings, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to store so many materials. After buying the materials, Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing prepared to leave. There were too many powers in Gemstone Islands, and staying here wouldn't bring them any good. Lord Darklight King, they've left. In the tea house, a person walked to Darklight King's side and reported, "Well done." Darklight King put down the teacup in his hand and abruptly stood up, his face overflowing with killing intent. Chapter 808. After leaving the Gemstone Islands, Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing headed south. Hundreds of millions of li away was a place Battle King had once visited. The reason Yi Chen had come to the southern deep sea was precisely because of this. He wanted to see if that place was like the one in Battle King's memories. In one night, Morong Qingqing had already branded her soul imprint on the inside of the purple flame demonic glove. At this moment, she was fiddling with the purple flames, which were the inherent power of the glove, and possessed extremely powerful corrosive properties. As the purple flames receded, a faint black light pattern appeared on the surface of the glove. This was the dark halo formed by the dark energy. It had a tremendous amplification effect on warriors with dark energy. As for how much amplification it was, it could only be determined through a battle. 1,000 li behind the two, a flickering black radiance streaked across the sky and chased after them with astonishing speed. Its speed was so fast that it couldn't even be described as lightning. What belongs to me will belong to me. Enveloped in the black radiance, Darklight King's eyes were ice-cold and emotionless. With a swish, his speed increased once again, and the black radiance flickered faintly. Coming! Yi Chen sensed a powerful fluctuation rapidly approaching from behind. Turning around, he saw Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing standing side by side. Swish! With a flicker of black radiance, Darklight King appeared 10 li away from the two. You two are truly daring. You actually didn't increase your speed to the maximum. Darklight King was somewhat surprised. The speed of a half-step king wouldn't be too far off. Although he was confident in catching up to Yi Chen and Morong Qingqing, he didn't expect them to be this fast. Why would we hide from you? In fact, we were waiting for you. Fortunately, you didn't disappoint us. Yi Chen said indifferently. Arrogant, Darklight King was infuriated by Yi Chen's attitude. A black radiance burst out from his body, making him look like a shining black sun. His powerful aura caused the ocean to surge violently. Yi Chen, let me. Morong Qingqing took a step forward. That's good. You can test out how strong the shadow armor and purple flame magic glove are. Yi Chen nodded. With the shadow armor, even if Morong Qingqing faced a veteran strongest half-step king like the Darklight King, she would be invincible. Moreover, with the purple flame demonic glove, Morong Qingqing's offensive power had already surpassed the majority of half-step kings, allowing her to clash head-on with the strongest half-step king. As for how powerful Morong Qingqing would be, Yi Chen couldn't make a precise guess, because he himself had never exchanged blows with the strongest half-step king. Hee, you are sending your woman to her death. Don't think that just because she has the shadow armor and the purple flame demonic light gloves, I can't do anything to her. The power of a strongest half-step king is something you will never understand. The dark bright king was so angry that he started laughing. The black radiance on his body became even more dazzling. The piercing black radiance illuminated everything within several hundred li. There's going to be a war over there. Several thousand li away, many people were rushing over. They were Huang Mei, Yu Lingshuang, Yu Bingxin, Scarlet Fire King, Steward He, as well as some well-informed half-step kings. Huang Mei's speed was the fastest. As she moved, she was like a flickering yellow light. With each flicker, she covered a distance of 100 li. Scarlet Fire King was second only to Huang Mei. With his entire body covered in flames, he was like a blazing meteor, emitting a dazzling fiery radiance. Steward He had brought a total of 4 half-step kings. Nobody knew what their intentions were, but their speed was very fast. They were clearly first-rate half-step kings. Yu Lingshuang probably hadn't raised her speed to the limit. Together with Yu Bingxin, 2 streaks of silver light streaked toward the dazzling black sun ahead. Auntie faster. Yu Bingxin mustered her strength and continuously accelerated. I'll bring you along. Yu Lingshuang smiled bitterly and grabbed Yu Bingxin's arm. The silver moon white fox phantom suddenly appeared behind her. With a swish, its speed doubled. At a glance, it seemed as if it was leaping in the void. Swish, 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 swish. Nearly 20 people flew toward the three's location at the same time. Yi Chun and the other 2 had also sensed their arrival, so they exchanged glances. I forgot to say goodbye to Yu Bingxin. Yi Chun had left in a hurry. Although he had coincidentally met Yu Bingxin in the Golden Island auction house, he hadn't seen her again. Young Master Yi, this person is extremely powerful. You should let my auntie help you. From afar, Yu Bingxin's voice wrapped in Zhen Yuan transmitted to Yi Chun's ears. Many thanks for your kindness, but there's no need. Yi Chun tactfully declined. Yu Bingxin anxiously said, strongest half-step kings are not as simple as you think. They are different from ordinary half-step kings. They have already refined Zhen Yuan into their bone marrow. Refining Zhen Yuan into blood vessels could allow one to reach half-step king realm. When all 3 blood vessels were filled with Zhen Yuan, one would have to refine Zhen Yuan into the bone marrow. Once one reached this step, not only would their Zhen Yuan be incomparably robust, but its purity would also be incomparable to before. At this point, as long as one's profound martial skills and martial spirit reached the standard, one could be considered a strongest half-step king. I know. How could Yi Chun not know the strength of strongest half-step kings? Yi Chun, Miss Morong, I believe the 2 of you will make the Darklight King eat a big loss. Unlike Yu Lingshuang, Huang Mei knew Yi Chun and Morong Qingqing very well. As far as she was concerned, the 2 belonged to the inhuman category. Of course, Morong Qingqing was indeed inhuman, and possessing superhuman strength was understandable. On the other hand, Yi Chun belonged to the inhuman category. Hee. Yi Chun chuckled. After a while, those who had rushed over to watch the battle stopped and watched from afar. The Darklight King might not have 100% chance of winning 1 against 2, but he should have a 70 to 80% chance. I wonder what their real strength is. None of the spectators were ordinary characters. Each of them had keen eyesight. Although the Darklight King was a veteran strongest half-step king, he also had a pseudo-supreme grade artifact, and perhaps more than 1 or 2. The reason they had come was partly to watch the show, and partly to fish in troubled waters. Licking his lips, the Darklight King sneered. It's been a long time since I've slaughtered. Today, I'll let you 2 experience my strength. The fact that he had reached the 2nd layer of life and death chamber was only known by a few people. Only strongest half-step kings could sense it. Morong, be careful. Yi Chun signaled Morong Qingqing with his eyes. I know, I won't be careless. Morong Qingqing flew out and stopped 5 li away from the Darklight King. What? 1 against the Darklight King? I thought that kid had some ability. Who would have thought that he's relying on a woman? But this woman's strength alone doesn't even have a 10% chance against the Darklight King. Even if they're confident, they're too arrogant. Do they think the words of strongest half-step kings are spoken casually? Everyone's faces were filled with puzzlement, and soon after, they revealed expressions of pity. The 2 of them were probably going to die. Die. The Darklight King wasn't in the mood to talk with the 2. His body flickered with a black light, and as if teleporting, he flew toward Morong Qingqing at an extreme speed. Spreading open his right hand, a flickering black light faintly appeared. Retreat! Morong Qingqing roared, and a purple-black electric current surged out of her body. The dark shadow armor was immediately activated, and a formless and powerful force field fiercely radiated out with her as the center. Due to the force field being too powerful, the magnetic field of the heaven and earth was distorted, and wind, fire, thunder, and lightning flickered simultaneously. Pop! A shocking scene occurred. How did the Darklight King arrive? How did he fly back? The frightening recoil caused his face to turn pale, and his eyeballs to almost pop out. This time was different from the previous exchange with Yi Chun. Morong Qingqing had pushed the dark force field to the limit, fusing it with the heavenly star force field. Even a strongest half-step king wouldn't be able to get close to her. The might of the dark shadow armor was fully displayed on Morong Qingqing's body. Chapter 809. What a powerful force field! Yu Lingshuang sucked in a breath of cold air. As the strongest half-step king, she knew better than anyone how much power was required to repel them with a force field. After all, the Zhen Yuan of a strongest half-step king had already reached the peak of half-step king realm. Sure enough, Huang Mei revealed a faint smile. She had already witnessed Morong Qingqing's dark force field. However, back then, she didn't put it in her eyes at all. However, the current dark force field was something that even she had to sigh in admiration. Thinking about it, it should be thanks to the shadow armor. Darklight King was actually repelled by the force field? This is too exaggerated. Dark shadow armor, it's definitely the dark shadow armor. No wonder she didn't hesitate to fall out with Darklight King and buy it. If my guess is correct, she cultivated some kind of force field. Combined with the heavenly star force field of the dark shadow armor, it's not as simple as 1 + 1. I was wondering why she dared to fight Darklight King alone. Turns out she had a trump card. Everyone discussed spiritedly, feeling shocked. The dark shadow armor is a pseudo-supreme grade artifact. Activating it requires a large amount of Zhen Yuan. Let's see how long you can last. The head steward's eyes flickered as he inwardly sneered. Aunt, young Lady Morong has such a powerful force field that even Darklight King can't approach her. Is she undefeatable? Yu Bingxin said happily. Yu Lingshuang shook her head. A pseudo-supreme grade artifact is no small matter. But it's still too early to say she's undefeatable. Unless she can activate her defensive artifact, the outcome won't change. At most, she'll only be able to buy some time. After flying back dozens of li, Darklight King finally managed to stabilize his body. At this moment his breathing was ragged, and his chest was heaving up and down. Although the sudden repulsive force didn't injure him too much, it wasn't pleasant either. Just a moment ago, his heart had almost reached its limit due to inertia. After all, being pushed back dozens of li while moving at full speed would not feel good. If one's cultivation base was a bit weaker, they might even be killed by the repulsive force. Good. Darklight King said good twice in a row. He really didn't expect the other party to have such a trick up their sleeves. No wonder they didn't put him in their eyes for the sake of the shadow armor. It turned out that they were after the heavenly star force field of the shadow armor. But do you think I can't do anything to you just because you have a force field protecting you? The Darklight King stared at Morong Qingqing, taking the opportunity to recover. Morong Qingqing said lightly, You said it yourself, I didn't. Hee. The Darklight King grinned. The further you are from the force field, the smaller the effect. A large black chi burst out, and a pair of huge black bat wings unfolded behind Morong Qingqing. With a slight flap, Morong Qingqing's figure instantly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already above the Darklight King. Soul-extinguishing wave. Holding a black light sphere in her hand, Morong Qingqing suddenly crushed it. Huff! A black light containing a soul attack fanned out, enveloping the Darklight King within. The Darklight King was blasted away. The pure offensive power of the soul-extinguishing wave wasn't that powerful, so he didn't suffer any injuries. However, the soul attack contained within it made him somewhat dazed. He couldn't react in time, and was immediately put at a disadvantage. Black bat wings. She has the perfect demonic bloodline of the demonic human race. Someone cried out in alarm. The previous battle had made everyone aware of Morong Qingqing's identity as a demonic human. However, they didn't think that she had the perfect demonic human bloodline. After all, the perfect demonic human bloodline was extremely rare. Even in the formidable chaotic demon ocean, there were only 2 of them. However, as soon as the black bat wings appeared, it was hard for them not to know Morong Qingqing's identity. After all, it was too similar to the appearance of the demons in the ancient records. This, Bingxin, what's going on? Yu Lingshuang looked at Yu Bingxin. Yu Bingxin replied, I only know that she's a demonic human, not a perfect demonic human. However, she killed many people in chaotic demon ocean, so she shouldn't be from there. Not from chaotic demon ocean? Yu Lingshuang's face turned pensive, then she slowly said, Seems like I'm overthinking things. Apart from chaotic demon ocean, there are also demonic humans in other places. True Spirit Continent is millions and millions of li away from here. They should be from there. Very good. You actually forced me to this extent. You should be proud of yourself. However, this is still not enough. Now, I'll let you witness my true strength. Darklight King's figure shot back, increasing the distance between them. As he spoke, the black light on his body grew increasingly denser and more dazzling. Different from Morong Qingqing's demonic power, Darklight King's Zhen Yuan gave off a scorching sensation that could scorch the earth. Buzz! Darklight King's Zhen Yuan undulations suddenly rose to a whole new level, and a frightening heatwave spread out in all directions with him as the center. Life and Death Chamber Second Layer. Yu Lingshuang's eyes shone brightly. Before this, Darklight King had been contending against Morong Qingqing with the strength of the first layer. But now, he finally revealed his true strength. As the strongest half-step king, Darklight King's potential was naturally not weak. Of course, Yi Chen didn't dare confirm that he had relied on his own potential to become a strongest half-step king. Elysium was boundless, and there might be some heavenly treasures that could increase one's potential. Ihidai, Obsidian Palm. With his strength rising to the second layer, Darkbright King roared and slammed his palm toward Morong Qingqing. The enormous palm imprint blotted out the sun, and a fiery chi wave swept out in all directions, evaporating the ocean waves. Swish! Not wanting to face Darkbright King head-on, Morong Qingqing flapped her black bat wings and instantly disappeared. With her natural advantage in speed, and the speed amplification of the shadow armor, Darkbright King would have a hard time locking onto her. Where are you going? Darkbright King thrust out dozens of palms in a row, sending out fiery palm energies. Swish! 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 Morong Qingqing's figure flickered unceasingly in the void, dodging palm energies one after another. Her extreme speed left everyone dumbfounded. Demonic finger! Suddenly, Morong Qingqing attacked Darkbright King with her finger. Who could have expected that after reaching the second layer of Life and Death Chamber, Darkbright King's battle strength would be no small matter. With a single palm, he slapped away the black sun-like demonic finger. The power of the sky demon finger brushed against the surface of the ocean and left a terrifying mark. Finally, with a loud bang, it exploded and created a huge crater with a diameter of tens of miles. Soul-extinguishing wave. Morong Qingqing felt that her demonic power was about to be exhausted. Up until now, she had barely used any of her trump cards. Most of the time, she was using ordinary attacks to contend against Darkbright King. It was not intentional, but the shadow armor and purple flame demonic gloves consumed too much demonic power. If not for the fact that she had activated the shadow armor in the middle of the battle, her demonic power would have been exhausted long ago. Even so, after using the soul-extinguishing wave, she didn't even have 10% of her demonic power left. The soul-extinguishing wave's range was too wide, and its speed was too fast. Darkbright King knew that he couldn't dodge, so he circulated his martial will and arranged a will barrier in front of him. Boom! 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 The will barrier blocked the soul attack, and the protective Zhen Yuan blocked the soul-extinguishing wave's energy attack. Darkbright King wasn't injured in the slightest. Demonic fist. Suddenly, Morong Qingqing's speed soared, and she instantly appeared before Darkbright King. Not good. Dark Bright King pushed his Zhen Yuan to the limit, and a flickering black light burst out. His whole body was like a black sun, burning fiercely. Large patches of black flames surged out, containing a terrifying power capable of scorching the earth. After all, it would be hard to avoid encountering strongest half-step kings in the future. This duel would allow them to clearly witness the strength of a strongest half-step king, as well as the strength of Morong Qingqing. Now that Morong Qingqing's demonic power was exhausted and she was injured, Yi Chen naturally had to step forward. Morong Qingqing faintly nodded and retreated to Yi Chen's side. What's going on? Don't tell me she's giving up? What else can she do? Can't you see that her demonic power is exhausted? Without demonic power, anyone can kill her. You're right. Demonic power is different from Zhen Yuan, and there's basically no pill that can replenish it. This is also one of the shortcomings of the perfect demonic human bloodline. Seeing Morong Qingqing retreat, the crowd sighed inwardly. Dark Bright King was Dark Bright King after all, not someone ordinary people could deal with. Even after exhausting all means, he could only delay for a short period of time. At this moment, who among the two could stop him? That kid was probably even worse. Dark Bright King had only suffered a minor injury. He quickly flew over and coldly said, "Not bad. You actually managed to injure me at the last moment. Unfortunately, your endurance is a bit lacking. That was merely a warm-up for me. Then let's start now." Treading on the void, Yi Chen walked out step by step, stopping 10 li away from Dark Bright King. "Start? With just you?" Dark Bright King laughed heartily, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "No way. Don't tell me he's even stronger than that woman? His cultivation base is only mid-half-step king realm, not even as high as mine. He probably thinks that Dark Bright King has consumed a lot of Zhen Yuan, and is injured, so he wants to take turns to defeat him. Fart. This kind of injury is nothing to Dark Bright King. Although this kid's cultivation base is similar to that woman's, one has Zhen Yuan, while the other has demonic power. They are simply incomparable. In terms of martial skills, demonic power fist is incomparably tyrannical. His profound martial skills are already not bad at all. Only his sword intent is a bit more powerful. Unfortunately, in a situation where the difference in willpower isn't too great, it won't be able to play a decisive role. Everybody's mouths were wide open, unable to understand where Yi Chen's confidence came from. Auntie, Yu Bingxin was a bit worried. Dark Bright King was frighteningly powerful. Morong Qingqing had exhausted all her means, yet she couldn't do anything to him. In the end, she would exhaust her demonic power and retreat. Yi Chen would be in danger. Let's watch first. Yu Lingshuang's expression was grave. If Yi Chen couldn't defeat Dark Bright King, she would have to lend a hand. Therefore, she had to grasp the perfect timing. Let me see your true strength. Among the crowd, only Huang Mei had complete confidence in Yi Chen, and said inwardly. Chapter 811. How is this possible? Yu Lingshuang and Yu Bingxin were not the only ones shocked. Apart from Huang Mei and Morong Qingqing, everyone else was astonished to the extreme. They even wondered if they were seeing things, or if they were hallucinating. Otherwise, how could such a scene happen? Dark Light King was sent flying by Yi Chen's sword. Dark Bright King's cultivation base was 3 levels higher than Yi Chen's. Yi Chen was a mid-half-step king, and above him was the high level. Then, there was the first layer of life and death chamber, and the second layer of life and death chamber. Just the difference in cultivation base alone was enough to widen the gap between the two. Dark Light King might not be able to injure Yi Chen with a single palm strike, but he should at least be evenly matched. Who could have imagined that Yi Chen would be so frightening, gaining the upper hand in a single exchange? Yi Chen indifferently smiled, but didn't pursue his opponent. When he was at peak late sea of Soul Realm, he had the strength of a strongest half-step king with the Thunder Disaster sword in hand. Now that he had reached mid-half-step king realm, even without the evil shattering sword, he was confident that he could contend against the Dark Light King, who was at the second layer of life and death chamber. Adding the evil shattering sword, the result could be easily imagined. As for the advantage, in terms of cultivation base, Yi Chen was indeed much weaker than Darklight King. However, one shouldn't forget that Yi Chen's profound martial skill, Waning Moon, was his trump card. No matter how powerful Darklight King's Darklight palm arts were, they were still much weaker. In terms of will, Yi Chen's Destruction Sword intent had long since reached the 5th step, which was equivalent to an ordinary 6th step sword intent. On the other hand, Darklight King's martial will was merely at the peak of the 4th step, a gap of 1.5 step, and will was even harder to make up than cultivation base. In a situation where both sides had similar fighting strength, the one with the higher will would usually have the last laugh. As for the reason, it was very simple. Humans were made of flesh and blood, and after a long battle, their condition would inevitably decline. For example, their Zhen Yuan would decrease, and as long as they didn't die, their will would not fluctuate too much. It could be said that the strength of one's will determine one's potential. As expected, I've really met someone who has the chance to become a legend. Huang Mei smiled faintly. Since ancient times, there would be many unparalleled experts born in every era. However, there would only be 1 or 2 legendary figures in every era. Currently, there were no legendary figures in this era. Although those titled monarchs were strong, they were only considered as unparalleled masters, and not legendary figures.